The dust storm rolled across the Wyoming plains like a vengeful ghost, turning the midday sun into a dim, sickly orb. Penny Fletcher clung to the saddle horn, her strength fading with each labored breath as her horse stumbled forward through the blinding haze. Blood seeped through her cotton blouse where the outlaw's bullet had caught her just below the ribs, and the copper taste of mortality filled her mouth. It was 1878, and dying alone on the frontier wasn't uncommon for folks who'd ventured west. But at 22, Penny hadn't counted on meeting her maker quite so soon, not when she'd traveled all this way to claim her late uncle's homestead outside of Wheatland, Wyoming. Her horse whinnied nervously as it crested a small rise, then stumbled to its knees. Penny slid from the saddle, landing hard on the packed earth. The impact sent a searing pain through her body, and darkness threatened the edges of her vision. Through the swirling dust, she made out the shape of a man approaching, tall and broad-shouldered, the silhouette of a cowboy hat against the hazy light. "Help," she tried to call, but her voice came out as little more than a whisper. The man rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "Miss, can you hear me?" His voice was deep, tinged with concern. Penny felt herself slipping away, the pain becoming distant as her consciousness ebbed. "I'm dying," she whispered, her eyes fluttering closed. The cowboy slipped an arm beneath her shoulders, lifting her slightly. "Not if I can help it," he said firmly, his voice cutting through her fading awareness like a lifeline. Penny forced her eyes open one last time to see a face weathered by sun and wind, intense blue eyes beneath the brim of a dust-covered hat, before the world went black. When she awoke, it was to the crackle of a fire and the scent of coffee. Pain still radiated from her side, but it was duller now, more manageable. She lay on a bedroll inside what appeared to be a small cabin, rough-hewn logs surrounding her. "You're awake," the same deep voice observed. The cowboy moved into her field of vision, offering a tin cup of water. "Drink slow." Penny took the cup with trembling hands. "How long?" she managed after a small sip. 2 days, he said, settling on a wooden stool beside her. "Name's Brock Forrester, found you half dead in that dust storm. Bullet wound was pretty bad, but I got it cleaned and stitched. You're lucky it passed clean through." "Penny Fletcher," she replied weakly. "Those men, they attacked me on the road, took my belongings." Brock nodded grimly. "Road agents have been hitting travelers hard lately. Sheriff can't seem to catch them." He paused, studying her face. "What brings a lady like you out to these parts alone?" "My uncle died," Penny explained, wincing as she shifted. "Left me his homestead, all I have left after my parents passed last winter. I was heading to Wheatland to claim it." "That'd be the old Fletcher place about 5 miles east of town," Penny nodded, surprised. "You knew my uncle?" "Everyone knew Thomas Fletcher," Brock said with a slight smile. "Good man, sorry for your loss." He stood, adjusting the fire. "This is my line shack. I work the Rocking M Ranch about 3 miles from here. You rest up. When you're stronger, I'll get you to town, see the doctor proper." "Thank you," Penny whispered, feeling tears well up. "I don't know how to repay you." Brock shook his head. "Don't need payment for doing what's right, Miss Fletcher." In the days that followed, Penny slowly regained her strength. Brock proved to be a surprisingly good caretaker, changing her bandages with gentle hands that belied their roughness and keeping her fed with simple but hearty meals. "Where did you learn to tend wounds like this?" Penny asked one evening as he checked her stitches. "War," he replied simply. "Served as a field medic for a spell during the last years, saw more than my share of bullet wounds." Penny watched his face as he worked, noticing the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the flecks of gray in his dark brown hair, though he couldn't be much past 30. "You saved my life," she said quietly. His blue eyes met hers for a moment. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she disagreed. "Not everyone would." After a week, Penny was able to sit up and move around the cabin a bit. She learned that Brock had been working on the Rocking M for 5 years, that he'd come west after the war with nothing but his horse and saddle, looking to put distance between himself and memories too painful to face daily. The foreman's been by twice checking on you, Brock told her over a supper of beans and biscuits. Brought some clothes his wife thought might fit you. She's offered to put you up in town until you're fully healed. That's kind, Penny said, feeling a strange disappointment at the thought of leaving the small cabin. But I should see about my uncle's place soon. Brock hesitated. About that, your uncle's homestead, it's been standing empty since he passed. Roof's got holes and someone's been helping themselves to the wood from his barn. Penny's heart sank. I was afraid of something like that. It's fixable, Brock assured her, just needs work, and time. The next morning, Brock helped Penny onto his horse and climbed up behind her. The closeness made her acutely aware of him, the solid warmth of his chest against her back, the careful way his arms encircled her to hold the reins. They rode slowly toward Wheatland, the spring sun warming the air and painting the landscape in vibrant greens and golds. When the small frontier town came into view, Penny felt both relief and trepidation. "We'll get you settled at Mrs. Miller's boarding house," Brock said as they approached the main street. "Doc Evans has his office just down the way. He'll want to check those stitches." Wheatland was bustling with the usual activity of a growing western town, freight wagons loaded with supplies, cowboys fresh from drives looking to spend their pay, homesteaders in for provisions. Several people called greetings to Brock as they passed. They stopped first at the doctor's office, where the elderly physician examined Penny's wound with approval. "Good work, Forrester," he commented. "Clean as any I've seen. Miss Fletcher, you're lucky this man found you when he did. Another hour and we'd be having a different conversation." After the examination, Brock escorted Penny to the boarding house, where the proprietress, Mrs. Miller, welcomed her warmly. "You poor dear," she clucked, leading Penny to a small but comfortable room. "Mr. Forrester told me about your ordeal when he came to town for supplies. You rest up here as long as you need." Before leaving, Brock hesitated at the doorway. "I'll check in on you when I come to town," he said, twisting his hat in his hands. "And I can ride out to your uncle's place, see what needs doing most urgently." "You've already done so much," Penny protested. "It's no trouble," he insisted. "Besides, I owed your uncle a favor or two." Over the following weeks, as Penny regained her strength, she learned more about Wheatland and its inhabitants. Mrs. Miller proved to be a fountain of local knowledge, filling Penny in on the town's history and current affairs over morning coffee. "That Brock Forrester," Mrs. Miller remarked one day, "he's been by to ask after you every time he's in town. Quiet man, keeps to himself mostly, but respected. Turned down being foreman twice, I hear, prefers working with the horses." Penny felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the coffee. "He saved my life. Indeed he did," Mrs. Miller agreed with a knowing smile, "and he seems mighty invested in your recovery." True to his word, Brock had been riding out to the Fletcher homestead, patching the roof and securing the property. When Penny was finally strong enough, he took her to see it for herself. The sight of her uncle's homestead stirred mixed emotions. The small house and barn sat in a beautiful valley with Laramie Peak visible in the distance. Fields that had once grown wheat lay fallow, but the creek running through the property bubbled clear and strong. "It's more than I expected," Penny admitted, walking slowly around the yard. "Even with the damage, good bones," Brock agreed. "Your uncle built things to last." Inside, the house was dusty but largely intact. Penny ran her fingers over the table her uncle had crafted, memories surfacing of childhood visits when her parents had still been considering the move west. "I can do this," she said with growing conviction. "I can make this work." Brock leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "It's a lot for one person, especially someone still healing." "I don't have much choice," Penny replied. "This is all I have left." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Brock cleared his throat. "I've been thinking," he began, uncharacteristically hesitant. "I could help you get this place running again. I've got some savings and I know ranching." "The land around here is good for cattle." Penny looked at him, surprised. "Why would you do that?" Brock met her gaze, something vulnerable in his eyes. "Because I think you're the kind of person worth helping, and maybe because I've been looking for something that feels like purpose again." The offer hung between them, weighted with unspoken possibilities. Penny considered it carefully, aware that accepting meant tying her future to this man she'd known only a short time, yet somehow felt she'd known always. "I can't ask that of you," she said finally. "You didn't ask," he pointed out. "I'm offering as partners." The word held promise. "I'll think about it," she promised. As spring turned to summer, Penny moved into her uncle's house, making it habitable one room at a time. True to his word, Brock helped when he wasn't working at the ranch, repairing fences and clearing fields. Sometimes he brought supplies from town, seeds for a kitchen garden, chickens for eggs, tools she would need. Penny found herself watching for his arrival, her heart quickening at the sight of his tall figure on horseback. Their conversations grew easier, punctuated by moments of companionable silence as they worked side by side. One evening in July, as they sat sharing a simple supper Penny had prepared, a thunderstorm rolled in from the mountains, bringing welcome rain to the parched land. Lightning split the sky, followed by crashes of thunder that rattled the windows. "I should head back," Brock said, rising reluctantly, "before it gets worse." Penny touched his arm. "Stay," she said softly. "It's not safe out there and the bunkhouse is too far." Their eyes met, understanding passing between them. Brock nodded once, settling back into his chair. As the storm raged outside, they talked long into the night. Brock spoke of his family back east, of the war that had changed him, of nightmares that still woke him in cold sweats. Penny shared her dreams for the homestead, her fear of failing, her memories of parents who had always encouraged her independence. When exhaustion finally claimed them, Penny offered him her uncle's old room, taking the small bedroom off the kitchen for herself. As she drifted to sleep to the sound of rain on the roof, she realized that for the first time since her parents' deaths, she didn't feel alone. The next morning dawned clear and fresh. Penny found Brock already outside, splitting wood for her cookstove. The domestic sight of him working in her yard sent an unexpected wave of longing through her. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said as they shared coffee on the porch, watching the sun burn the dew off the fields. "About being partners." Brock looked at her, waiting. "I accept," she continued, "but I want everything clear between us. This is business. I won't be beholden to any man, no matter how kind." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Understood, Miss Fletcher, business it is." He offered his hand, and they shook on it, though his touch lingered longer than strictly necessary. Word spread quickly through Wheatland that Brock Forrester was leaving the Rocking M to help Penny Fletcher revive her uncle's homestead. It caused quite a stir, particularly among the unmarried women who had set their caps for the handsome cowboy over the years. "People are talking," Penny told him one day as they returned from town with supplies. "Let them," Brock replied with a shrug. "Folks will always talk. Doesn't make it our concern." But Penny knew it wasn't that simple. A single woman and a bachelor living and working in close proximity invited speculation, regardless of the business arrangement. Mrs. Miller had pulled her aside during her last visit to town. "You're playing with fire, my dear," she warned kindly. "A man like that doesn't partner with a woman unless he has intentions. We're rebuilding the homestead together, nothing more," Penny had insisted, though her flushed cheeks betrayed her. By late summer, they had repaired the barn, planted a small crop of wheat for the following year, and acquired a modest herd of 10 cattle to start their operation. They settled into a routine, Brock sleeping in the barn while Penny occupied the house, taking their meals together but maintaining propriety. Yet something was changing between them, subtle but undeniable. It was in the way Brock's eyes followed her movements, in how Penny found reasons to be near him, in conversations that stretched late into the evening. One August afternoon, as they worked side by side mending tack, their hands brushed. Penny felt the contact like a current through her body, and when she looked up, Brock was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Penny," he said, her name like a prayer on his lips. Before he could continue, hoofbeats sounded in the yard. Brock was on his feet instantly, hand moving to the revolver he kept at his hip. Penny followed him outside to find Sheriff Davis dismounting. "Afternoon, folks," the sheriff greeted them, pushing back his hat. "Thought you should know caught one of them road agents that's been troubling travelers. Man confessed to shooting a woman back in spring. Sounds like it might have been you, Miss Fletcher." Penny felt Brock tense beside her. "Did he give names of his accomplices?" he asked. The sheriff nodded grimly. "3 more men, says they're holed up in an old mining camp in the foothills. I'm putting together a posse to go after them tomorrow." "I'll join you," Brock said immediately. "No," Penny protested, gripping his arm. "It's too dangerous." Brock covered her hand with his. "These men left you for dead, Penny. They need to be brought to justice." The sheriff looked between them, noting their closeness. "Could use a good man like you, Forrester. We ride at dawn." After the sheriff departed, a heavy silence fell between them. Penny moved about the kitchen preparing supper, her movements jerky with suppressed emotion. "You don't have to do this," she said finally, setting plates on the table with more force than necessary. "It's not your fight." Brock approached her slowly. "The moment I found you bleeding in that dust storm, it became my fight." Penny turned to him, tears threatening. "And what if you don't come back?" "What then?" "I'll come back," he promised, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. "You can't know that," she whispered, leaning into his touch despite herself. "No," he agreed, "but I know I have something worth coming back for." The words hung between them, laden with meaning. Then Brock was drawing her closer, and Penny was rising to meet him, and their lips found each other in a kiss that felt inevitable, like coming home after a long journey. When they parted, Brock rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since you opened your eyes in my cabin," he admitted. "What took you so long, Cowboy?" she teased softly. "Wasn't sure you'd welcome it," he replied. "You're so fiercely independent," Penny smiled. "Independence doesn't mean I don't want to be loved." They spent that evening talking of feelings long held in check, of growing affection that had blossomed into something deeper. But dawn would come too soon, bringing with it danger and uncertainty. The posse departed as the first light broke over the eastern horizon. Penny stood in the yard, watching Brock ride away with the sheriff and 6 other men, fighting the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. The day passed with excruciating slowness as Penny threw herself into chores, anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from imagining Brock facing down armed outlaws. Night fell with no word, and she slept fitfully, startling at every sound. The second day was worse. By evening, Penny had worn a path in the yard from pacing. When hoofbeats finally approached, she ran to meet the riders, heart in her throat. Relief flooded her at the sight of Brock, dusty and tired but whole, dismounting in the yard. The sheriff rode alongside him with 2 prisoners bound on their horses. "Got all 4 of them," Sheriff Davis announced with satisfaction. 2 dead, 2 to stand trial. Found your stolen belongings too, Miss Fletcher. Brock here insisted we recover them." Later, after the sheriff had continued on to town with the prisoners, Brock handed Penny a familiar leather satchel. "My mother's locket was in here," she said, fingers trembling as she opened it, "and the deed to the homestead." "Everything's there," Brock assured her. "I checked." Penny looked up at him, seeing the exhaustion etched in his face and something else, a new resolve in his eyes. "When I was out there," he said slowly, "all I could think about was getting back to you, about what I'd be leaving unfinished if something happened." "Brock, let me say this," he interrupted gently. "I know we agreed to be partners in business, but I'm hoping for more than that, much more." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small worn box. "This was my mother's. I've carried it with me since she passed, waiting for the right person." Penny's heart thundered in her chest as he opened the box to reveal a simple gold band set with a small pearl. "Penny Fletcher," Brock said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. I know it hasn't been long, but some things you just know. I'm asking if you'll be my wife, my partner in everything. We can build something good here together." For a moment, Penny couldn't speak past the emotion tightening her throat. Then she placed her hand against his cheek, feeling the stubble beneath her palm. "When I thought I was dying," she said softly, "my only regret was all the things I'd never get to do, all the love I'd never get to give. You gave me a second chance at life, Brock Forrester. I'd be a fool not to spend it with you." His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Is that a yes?" "Yes," she whispered, laughing through tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Yes, it's a yes." Their wedding took place in Wheatland's small church as autumn painted the landscape in rich golds and reds. The town turned out in force Brock's former ranch mates, Mrs. Miller beaming proudly, the sheriff standing as witness. Penny wore a new dress of pale blue, with her mother's locket around her neck and wildflowers in her hair. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Brock kissed her with a tenderness that promised a lifetime of such moments. Their homestead flourished under their joint care. The wheat fields rippled gold in the harvest sun, the cattle herd grew steadily, and the house became truly a home filled with laughter and love, and eventually the patter of small feet when their son Benjamin arrived the following summer, followed 2 years later by their daughter Elizabeth. On their 5th anniversary, as they sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard, Penny leaned against Brock's shoulder. "Do you ever think about that day?" she asked. "When you found me in the dust storm," Brock's arm tightened around her. "Every day," he admitted. "How close I came to never knowing this life." "I was so certain I was dying," Penny mused. "And I was certain I wouldn't let you," Brock replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Best decision I ever made." As the sun set over their thriving homestead, painting the sky in brilliant hues, Penny knew with bone-deep certainty that she had found her place in the world not just on this land, but in the arms of the man who had refused to let her die that fateful day on the Wyoming plains. And in the years that followed, through drought and plenty, through joys and sorrows, their love story would become legendary in Wheatland, the tale of the dying woman and the stubborn cowboy who gave her a reason to live.